go through chapter 25 first, and then we'll review for the test we'll take on Thursday. How's the insect program going on here? Is it working out? It didn't overly stress anybody, did it? I hope you're ready for when we do that in Lab Thursday. We're going to do that in fish and crayfish dissection. Chapter 25, starting test 4. Chapter 25 will be the beginning chapter of test 4. This is the modern amphibians. And amphibians, the terminology there just tells us basically that they are adapted to live on land, but always must have water for reproduction. So the first page we're going to start on is page 552. And it's talking about the modern amphibians. We have two groups here that we're going to look at. We have tailed amphibians and tailless amphibians. How about that? And the first they tell us there's over 6,000 species in this particular group of modern amphibians. And the first order we're going to look at is order Chordata. Now these are the salamanders, and this is all on page 552. The newest name of this order is Urodela. I'm not sure why they're changing the names, but we're seeing some new names creep in here, just like we saw in the fishes chapter. Instead of Osteichthyes, we saw class Actinoptera. Again, I don't know why they're doing this, but this the order Chordata, the old name I like because Chordata in Latin literally means tailed amphibians. I mean, it means tails. So this order, Urodela or Chordata, comprises tailed amphibians, about 553 species, in almost all the North America temperate regions of the world, and they are abundant and diverse in North America. Salamanders occur also in tropical areas of Central and Northern South America. So you find them in a variety of different places, and typically it's got to be warm and moist as a general rule. You won't find them in extremely cold areas of the world. As far as the life cycles go, most of your salamanders are pretty much terrestrial, yet they require water. They have to keep their skin moist because of the respiration capabilities and some of the reproductive capabilities. Respiration, as we'll see a couple pages over, they may have lungs, they may have gills, they may not have either, or they may have both. So on respiration, that's a tough one, just flip a coin. They also will diffuse by diffusion if they don't have either one. And they could actually breathe by diffusion if they have both. A lot of it depends on the situation and the species and where they're at, so quite a variation there. Let's look at life cycles first, and what they're talking about here is how they go about reproducing in throughout their life cycle. The males are territorial, and these are mainly the terrestrial varieties that need warm, moist environments, but they don't have to be water, okay? So a terrestrial male salamander establishes a territory, and he's going to try to establish a territory that is most attractive to the female, one that has a great food source. It has food, of course, the great food source, shelter, water, all the necessities to rear young, to raise little ones. And so the female, she comes cruising through the territories, and she's observing the territories, and she likes a particular territory, so she begins to track down the male. And what tells her even more if she likes this male or not, or likes this territory or not, the first thing she wants to see is his feces. Now you have to admit, if you like one's feces, everything else should get better, shouldn't it? So why not start at the dung end of things? Pardon the pun. It's getting bad in here, isn't it? So you start at the bad end of things and you work your way up. So what is she looking at in the feces? The type of food he's eating. Now if she finds feces that has ant pieces and parts, she's not overly impressed. Will she eat those? Yeah, but is that steak compared to pieces and parts, steak finger or whatever? No, it's not. It's food, but it's not water. You know, so it doesn't really excite her. But if she finds feces that are made up of termite parts, oh my, that's the best ribeye, T-bone, filet mignon she can lap her lips around. So at this point, she decides, okay, I like the territory, I like everything about it. I have found his feces, and there must be a really nice food source here because he's been eating termites. He's eating high on the hog, so to speak. So she commences to start tracking him down. And thinking that she might be tracking him down, he left her a little gift. On some twig or leaf along the trail, he deposited a little packet of sperm. So she comes across the packet of sperm, she's already in love with the guy. She just gathers up the packet of sperm and deposits it inside of her and fertilizes herself, and he's nowhere around. So when she tries to get child support, he'll say, I was nowhere around when that happened. I've got an alibi, I was over here. Oh, that really didn't have anything to do with salamanders, did it? I'm sorry. But needless to say, that's what happens. She chooses, he leaves a little deposit of a packet of sperm, and she chooses to pick that up, and that's how reproduction happens. It's all by her choice. So that's one kind, or several kinds of these salamanders fit that particular cycle. American newts, whose aquatic larvae metamorphose to form terrestrial vertebrates that later metamorphose again to produce secondarily aquatic adults, breeding adults. So there's one that goes through two weird little life cycles and ends up back aquatic again. And then on 554, respiration, there's where they say they may have gills, lungs, both, or neither, nor. They may just diffuse. So a tough test question there. Could be all the above, none of the above. May not even be a good answer on that one. Who knows? But several lineages of salamanders have evolved permanently aquatic gills. And they don't ever metamorphose out of those. They actually reach an adult stage and can reproduce and still have aquatic gills, which is typically a metamorphic stage at some point. But they, in fact, they list those on 555 through a process called pediomorphosis. Pediomorphosis is where they don't lose their aquatic gills when they're supposed to. And the most dramatic form of pediomorphosis occurs in a species that sexually mature while retaining their gills, which this should be a lower level of stage there, but they never lose the gills. And these are called mud puppies. I don't know if you've ever heard of mud puppies or not, but they're found around here. But these mud puppies inhabit submerged substrates in ponds, lakes, or extreme example. Most of them is going to metamorphose out of that process. But these and many other salamanders do not metamorphose under any conditions. Whatever stage they're born in, that's the stage that they continue to grow in. They maintain larval stages, and they reach adulthood with larval stages, and they reproduce as adults with larval stages. And the mud puppies are their best example. So there's kind of give you a general idea of the tailed amphibians, the salamanders and newts, and they listed one weird newt that metamorphosed twice, out of water to terrestrial and then back into water as the breeding adult, so needed water for that. Frogs and toads are the next order Anura, and the Anura literally means tailless amphibians. So our frogs and toads, maybe in a larval stage, like a tadpole stage, would have a tail, but not as an adult stage. And your most common species will be found in this group. Even the ones that we'll dissect in the lab in a couple of weeks will be found in this group. The name and order Anura denotes obvious characteristic of absence of tails in the adults. Although there's tails in larval stages, the adults do not have them. We see in the appearance and life habits of their larvae further distinctions between Anura and Caudata. Eggs in most frogs hatch to a tadpole, having a long fin tail, both internal and external gills, no legs, specialized mouth parts for herbivorous feeding. Salamanders' larvae and some tadpoles are carnivorous. Just kind of an exception to the rule. Some of them are. And of course, these tadpoles have a very highly specialized internal anatomy. And most all tadpoles will be herbivorous because through the metamorphosis stages, there's no, we're not competing with the adult. Now we get over on 556 and it tells us that the frogs and toads divide into 44 families. The best known of these are the Ranidae, which is what we're going to dissect. The tree frogs are Halidae, and the old toad frogs are Bufonidae. I like that name, Bufonidae. You know, and we kind of abuse the old term toad. Any frog that's ugly, we call it an old toad, right? Not all ugly frogs are toads, as they're pointed here. And here's a description of a toad, and since we abuse that term, it'll be a test question, so we get it right at some point in life. And it tells us that if they belong to the family Bufonidae, they have short legs, stout bodies, thick skins, and usually with prominent warts. Now, it did not say if it has warts on it and they pee in your hand that it's going to leave warts behind. It did not say that. That is a myth. What did they leave behind when they left? Just urine, not warts, okay? So they peed on you. Well, you're not going to grow warts because of that. Now, you may grow warts, but it's not because of that. It's viral, okay? Now, they show the largest anurin here, and there's a picture of old Goliath on the right-hand page. Now, look at the legs on Goliath. This frog is massive. The legs look like that of a human, doesn't it? I mean, if you could ever, they'd take a battle to kill him and get those fried up, it'd feed a whole family and then some with it. This frog is so big, in fact, they list him to be more than 30 centimeters long from tip of nose to anus. That's not counting the legs. He's about that long before you get to the legs, about a ruler long. But he's so big, he eats things like rats and ducks. Yeah. Now, it doesn't say if it's adult mallard ducks. It may just be little ducks. I think they're sneaking one through on us here. He can't be that big, but 30 centimeters long. So the smallest frogs are less than a centimeter in length, and they're found in Brazilian rainforest, maybe Cuba. And our largest frog is the American bullfrog, which we're familiar with. We chew on his legs from time to time. Now, habitats and distribution, unlike a lot of other animals we talked about, I mean, we mention a lot of other animals and say, well, where do they live? Everywhere life exists, they're there. Insects, name it, they're there. Not with the frogs. In fact, you'll go into places that look like there ought to be frogs here, and they're not, for some reason. New Zealand has no frogs, and they have great habitat, but why there's not frogs there, I don't know. But habitats and distribution is really weird. It's hard to explain a lot of it. But they're found throughout temperate and tropical regions. Warmth and moisture is big. If you're talking cold desert, forget frogs. They're not going there. They list New Zealand, oceanic islands, and southern South America is where you're not going to find them. They usually live near water. That makes them an easy catch. At least we know where to go hunt, right? If you want a frog, go find water. Some of them will live in moist forest floors underneath leaves. As long as the forest floor is moist, they can survive that way. They spend their time on the damp forest floors. Larger bullfrogs and green frogs nearly always found in near permanent waters or swamps. Leopard frogs, and they're related to what we're going to be dissecting in lab later. They're more widespread in North America, commonly used in biological labs. It'd either be a leopard frog or a grass frog is what shows up in the bucket. We just order a frog. And we can actually order bullfrogs, but they're horribly expensive. I guess competition with the food chain. So we don't order bullfrogs very often. Now, frog species are often patchy in distribution, and this is the part that kind of stumps a lot of scientists. Being restricted to a specific stream or pool and absent and scarce in similar habitats nearby. For some reason, there's a bunch here and there's nothing that's down the stream. Most larger frogs are solitary except during breeding season. During breeding periods, most often, especially males, are very noisy. At times, frogs are mainly silent, and their presence is not detected until they are disturbed. You ever walk along the edge of a pond or a stream, and all of a sudden he makes a noise and jumps in, just scare the weebie-jeebies out of you? That's what they do best. They startle their predator, and then they dive down into the water, get to the bottom, stir up a bunch of mud to create camouflage, stay down there as long as they can, and then when they do come up, they'll try to come up within vegetation with just enough showing to be able to breed. So they've got it figured out, although at the same time, they're fairly easy prey because we know exactly where to go look for them, and they can only stay in that pool of water for so long. A lot of times they're silent. Presence is not detected at all until they scare you. When they surface to breathe, the head and foreparts are exposed, and they try to conceal themselves. Now during the winter months, you think, well, we have pretty harsh winters. How do they survive our cold winters that we have from time to time? Well, we know from Aristotle's observation that frogs emerge from mud in the spring, which tells me they got to bury themselves in there in the fall or late fall going into the winter. But still, they can't bury themselves so deep that if it does freeze, it's not going to get to them. They can't bury themselves that deep. So what they do is take and add extra glucose to their bloodstream and literally make their blood their own form of antifreeze. It's their own form of ethylene glycol, which in this blood circulating throughout gets out into the tissues as well. So if it does freeze all around them, their blood doesn't freeze at 0 Celsius or 32. Their blood will freeze much less, so it doesn't create ice crystals and therefore it doesn't create death. They can survive much colder than what we consider freezing. They winterize themselves, if you will. Okay. Tree frogs hibernate in humus of the forest floor. They just bury up as much as they can. They tolerate low temperatures, and many actually survive freezing all extracellular fluid, representing 35% of the body water. Such frost-tolerant frogs prepare for winter, accumulating glucose and glycerol, which is a breakdown of fatty components. When we dissect the frog, we'll find these groups of fat bodies inside of them. And what they're doing, they'll utilize that, get it in the bloodstream to add to the glucose, and they really make it difficult to freeze. You ever try to freeze fat? It doesn't freeze. It just becomes more globular. So if you got a little fatty issue into the bloodstream, it's much more difficult for it to freeze. So this all prevents them from forming ice crystals, which would create damage to the tissues. Now, as far as enemies to frogs, you can imagine what all likes to eat frogs. I mean, humans eat frogs, but what about aquatic birds? Fish, raccoons, snakes. They all know where to go to catch one, don't they? So adult frogs having these kind of enemies, they have to have ways of trying to survive. And this one frog in the picture on 558, he's fainting death. He's acting dead, so there you go. Who wants to eat something already dead, right? So we just bypass this dude right on, and he comes alive and leaves after we're gone. I've seen them be able to actually inhale enough air to almost double their body size. They like become a balloon. They suck it in, but they can't hold it. But they suck in so much air they can't hold it. So all this air is like barely holding a balloon that's full of air, and it's going. Yeah. And this thing's making this hissing noise now with this escaping air. And I was watching a little video clip on this not long ago, and a possum come around the corner and spotted this frog. With this frog, he just went and just blew up, and it started this hissing. And the possum's like, man, what's going on with that? And the possum hung around long enough, he run out of air, and he went back to normal size. And he realized it, so he did it again. And the possum's like, forget that, and he just walks off. So he didn't even attack him. And then there's some frogs that have poison glands. And the poison glands, I mean, it may be bad for that frog by the time whatever gets it mashes down on him, crushes him pretty good, gets a little poison in his mouth, and it may not kill the predator, but it sure gives him a bad taste in his mouth. So he doesn't really want to attack that kind of frog anymore. So it may not be good for that particular frog, but it's good for the species. He'll remember that. Just like when we get a hold of bad food, we don't do that anymore, do we? So those are just some ways, and of course their number one way of escaping is leaping. And if they can leap and jump into a pool of water or jump into brush or any way of escaping, that's their fastest and most common way of escaping. Let's see, integument coloration. Oh, their skin's really thin, as you'll notice. Now you get into some of the toad frogs, their skin's thicker, but most of the frogs we'll deal with, skin's really thin so they can diffuse. I'll mention this about breathing as well on frogs, which may be the next page, I don't remember. But frogs typically breathe by diffusion. That's what they're best at. But we'll find lungs and the frogs will dissect. And as pathetic as those lungs are, they can use them if they need to. And frogs will breathe by positive pressure. Positive pressure is in reference to they suck air in and force it, they swallow it down into the lungs. We breathe by negative pressure, which means all we do is take the rib cage and raise it up. We lower the diaphragm inside, and we create an atmospheric pressure inside, or a pressure inside that's less than atmospheric pressure, and air rushes in our nose, down the bronchi, and in until we reach an equilibrium. So that's negative pressure. Frogs breathe by positive pressure. All right. Yeah, they're talking about it on the next page, 560. And they tell you they breathe by positive pressure. Vocal cords located in the larynx or voice box are much more developed in males than in females. A frog produces sounds by passing air back and forth across the vocal cords. And of course they're using noise to attract mates. Usually humidity and temperature plays the biggest role in kicking in the breeding season. If we have a week of fairly warm weather, especially warm nights, it's not uncommon to hear frogs in December. I mean, about every year you can pick a night or two and you can find it. You can hear them. Now, circulation in frogs, a 3-chambered heart. It is a closed circulatory system, but it is a 3-chambered heart. Ours is 4-chambered, birds 4-chambered. As we move up the totem pole here, we're going to get 4-chambered. Fish had a 2-chambered heart. Why? Because they have gills that replaces our lungs, see? So 4-chambered you need for lung situations. 2-chambered, no lung situations. Here we have pathetic lungs, so 3 chambers will work. So there's a happy medium there somewhere. Special senses. Let's just say the frogs aren't specialized in a whole lot of senses. Their best sense is eyes, and they can see color, but it's pitiful. Their eyesight's not very good at all, but that's their best sense. We'll look at a frog brain in lab when we get to dissect that, and that frog brain we're going to look at in lab is pretty pathetic. The cerebellum of this frog brain is so small, it's hard to see. But if you think about it, cerebellum deals with balance and coordination, right? How far is a frog off the ground? So if they trip and fall, it's not like they're going to break a hip or break their neck, right? Probably won't even bruise anything. So not a lot of need for cerebellum. Their biggest component, probably optic lobes. Second, maybe cerebrum. They're not going to brag, right home bragging about their cerebrum size because it's not huge by any means. So that kind of gives you an idea. Their eyes are their best sense, and that's not great. They do see color, like I said, and they mentioned that on 562. Now, reproduction in frogs, all frogs need some kind of moisture, whether it be actually in a pool of water, in a pond, in a stream, in a lake, or a mud hole. Some frogs that live in the rainforest actually will find large leaves of plants that the leaves are cupped, and they actually hold water, and they'll lay their eggs in that, and that suffices for what they need. So the female, this is nearly, except for a few exceptions, and there are a few exceptions, and they're listed on this page, 564. But in general, the frogs we're familiar with, you will have an oviparous reproductive mode. It means egg birth. You'll have the female discharging eggs into a pool of water, and the male is attached to her back called a plexus, and he is fertilizing the eggs as they leave her body externally. And that's the most typical form. Now we see here on page 564 that picture A is a female South American pygmy marsupial frog. Marsupial because it's got a pouch on its back. Carries developing larvae in a dorsal pouch. Picture B is a Suriname frog, carries eggs embedded in specialized brooding pouches on the dorsal. Froglets emerge and swim away when development is complete. C is a male poison arrow frog, carries tadpoles adhering to its back. And D is the male Darwin's frog. These tadpoles develop into froglets in the vocal pouch. When ready to emerge, a froglet crawls into the parent's mouth, which the parent opens to allow the froglet to escape. So there are some odd ducks out there, or I should say odd frogs instead of odd ducks, since we're in the frog chapter. We haven't made it to the bird chapter yet. And kind of gives you a general rule. I think we figured out at this point for every general rule there's extreme exceptions. About every order, every class, there's always an exception to the general rule. We found them again. That takes us to chapter 26. So at this point, get your study guide out for test 3, and we will advance ourselves over that. How many has been working on this? Because if you haven't, you will meet depression between now and Thursday. There's a lot to do, and a lot to look at, and a lot to try to grasp out of 11 chapters. Although we hit the high points, there's a lot of new terminology for most of you, and to pronounce this stuff, even I still can't. So you've got a lot of work to do. I'm the one giving the test, not you. Anybody have an answer for number 1? If nobody has answers, we're going to get through this really fast. I'm going to tell you if your answers are right or wrong. Osmoregulation, water balance, and that's kind of. So a lot of this, or several of these, come right off notes I gave you from chapters 9 and 10. So 9, 10, 11. Was it 11 that had? Anyway, water balance is what we're looking for. Number 2. Everybody should know the sequence of classification, starting with kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That's right. Number 3, what is the intermediate host of a lot of things? The snail. Yeah, some of the book will say a mollusk, and then some of it gets specific and says snails. We're going to stay with the snail. Number 4 is a true statement. Number 5, give me an example of a ciliophoran. Paramecium is our most common example. Give me an example of a sarcodeme. Amoeba. Name a member of the apicomplexan group. There's several of them, but name one that we're probably most familiar. You're mumbling.
Oh, I'm embarrassed.
Well, if you're right. What is it?
Toxoplasma.
Toxoplasma is one. Plasmodium parasite's probably the one causing malaria, we're most common, most familiar with. Coccidia, another one? Yeah. What, and some of these questions are repetitive. If you've looked at this, you've noticed 3 or 4 of them probably repetitive. This one is somewhere else down the line. What age group is the pinworm more common in? Children. What causes hookworm infections? I believe that one's repetitive too. Penetration through the skin. Dirt, yeah. Make skin contact with dirt. So number 10, leeches possess both an anterior and, that's a good guess, posterior sucker, are in what class?
Iridina.
Something like that. Hirudinae,
That's how it's pronounced.
and have a fixed number of
Segments.
segments or somites, another word for segment. What is that number? 34. Good job. What is elephantiasis caused by? Filarial worm infection. And what would be the vector for that? Mosquitoes. Could you be more precise? Yeah, thank you very much. How is it transferred? And that is the mosquito. How do earthworms reproduce, and what class do they belong to? There's mumbling again. I'm glad you're helping though, because I don't hear anybody else mumbling. Occasionally we get a mumble up here.
Can't read my handwriting.
Oh, you had it at one time, didn't you?
It's wrote down. I just can't read it.
Earthworms can be hermaphroditic. That is their means of reproduction, but they would choose to cross-fertilize if they have a partner to do that with. If not, they can be hermaphroditic. And they are in the class Oligochaete.
Sexual reproduction would work.
No. Oligochaeta is the class. 13. Functions of the macronucleus. Somebody else give me an answer.
Metabolism and reproduction.
Macronucleus is
Metabolism.
metabolic, it's metabolism. Micronucleus is reproduction. Very good. What is the most numerous and diverse group of animals? Nope, that's the most diverse group, or class of animals. Nope, that's the insect chapter. Go back. What insects fall in a phylum that has ticks and mites and insects and crayfish and spiders and arthropoda. Who said that? I knew you was holding information over there. Phylum Arthropoda is the largest assemblage of animals, and at the beginning of that chapter, they gave you like 6 reasons why they were. One of those was metamorphosis, I think, which was number 6, which really allows class Insecta to be the largest class of all animals. So class Insecta within Phylum Arthropoda, that's huge. We don't even get close with it. And what's second to insects in class?
Fishes.
Bony fishes. Yeah, the ray fin fishes. So, I like the way you said fishes. That's impressive. All right, what do spiders possess to function as fangs?
Something.
Chelicerae. Yep, that's more the tongue twister stuff. How many legs?
2 pairs.
2 pair of legs on these millipedes.
So 4 would be correct.
2 pair or 4 total would be all right. I think your test will have 2 pair though, so. Know how you become infected with hookworms. We already covered that one. They burrow through the skin. What is the parasite found in poorly cooked pork? Trichinella.
Yeah.
Trichinella.
Trichinosis from it.
Yeah, trichinosis from it. It can kill people.
All the treatment stuff is organic.
Yep.
Mostly.
Why are some insects important to humans? Now, important could be good or bad.
Pollination.
Pollination's that's good. We gotta have them for that.
Kill other insects.
That would be good, since y'all been studying that a little on the side, huh? How about producing food products? Honey, beeswax. What about transmitting disease? Is that important to you?
No.
It is if you catch the disease.
Not good though.
No, it's not a good, but important means good and bad. So we're not only pollinating crops, but we're destroying about as many, aren't we? transmitting disease, parasitism, those are all reasons why insects are important. What type of nerve cord do all chordates possess?
Dorsal hollow.
A single dorsal tubular, they call it. I think maybe one point it calls it a hollow. Single dorsal tubular. How do bony fish reproduce? Excuse me, bony fishes reproduce, my bad. Anybody want to attempt that one? Anybody withholding information?
Cross.
Well, I guess y'all got one to look up then, don't you?
Egbert?
How's that again?
Egbert?
It is.
Is it
You're thinking oviparous?
Yeah.
There's actually a fish would eat each one of these actually, but most of them are separate sexes with external fertilization, and that would cover it, whether it's ovoviviparous, oviparous, or viviparous. There's kind of a fish for all of them. So separate sexes, external fertilization. You know, the only one that would kind of kill off would be viviparous because it must be internal fertilization. Granted, oviparous would hit most of them, yes. What kind of scales do sharks have? Placoid.
Dermal, thin, something. Tiny skin.
The same scales used for their teeth as well, yes. What are the dominant fishes? Bony fish. What's the class name for that? Osteichthyes, or the new one is Actinitarian. Most common child nematode? Pinworms. What's the lateral line of shark used for?
Sense vibrations.
Distance touch, yeah. Distance touch. 26, the first statement answered a previous one. Most fish are oviparous. We had external fertilization and, what was it? Separate sexes, wasn't it? What does this mean? Well, oviparous means that we have egg birth and it's outside of the maternal body. Egg birth outside the maternal body. Where do you find lungfishes?
Australia.
Australia and South America, that's right. Africa, Australia, and South America. .28, I discovered in class yesterday that I actually missed this one page in lecture that I normally cover. I don't know why, but it covered the different planes, sagittal, frontal, which one? The answer to this is gonna be ventral, yes. Dorsal is backside. And that one page in chapter 9 covered all those. And why I missed it, I don't know. I just missed it. But what's a sagittal plane? Right through the middle gives you mirrored halves. What is a frontal plane? Cuts you this way and you have a front and a back plane. What's another plane? What's the plane that goes through the middle? Transverse plane. It gives you an upper and a lower. And of course they use terms like proximal, which is closest to the midsection, distal's furthest from the midsection, anterior, posterior, dorsal, ventral is the terms that they used in that little section. So, and they gave a picture of a cat or something that they had sliced up and had all the representations there. So I thought that was a good example, a cat sliced up. Where are we at?
29.
According to the binomial system of nomenclature, that AIDS and AIDS vexins refers to the genus. And just like one of the last questions on this study guide, they want you to be able to recognize a properly written scientific name. So your genus will be capitalized, your species will not, and both will be underlined. whether you recognize what sound hill it is or not, that doesn't matter. Your first word's capitalized, your second word's not, and they're both underlined. Okay? Common name for harvestment.
I think that's Hermisman.
Daddy long legs.
Oh.
What structure found in tapeworms is not in other flatworms?
No digestive system?
Is that not found in all other flatworms?
That's one I had.
They're looking for the reproductive units called proglottids. And a holdfast they call a scolex, something to attach. And strobili. So 32 has several things here. What does trypanosoma cause? African sleeping sickness. Toxoplasma causes? Say what? Toxoplasmosis. Where do we get that from? A cat. And the plasmodium causes malaria. 33, I'm going to reword this a little bit, is amoeboid movement anything like movement by cilia and or flagella? If it was, then why would they change the name? It's really nothing like it. I mean, amoeboid movement is kind of throwing the cytoplasm in one direction, dragging the rest of it that way. So, now, did we look? We didn't look at protozoans last week, did we? We did. Okay, I could remember. Yeah, it was y'all Thursday. It wasn't Friday's class. So, you remember seeing the amoeba, and you can see the cytoplasm moving in one direction, and he'd create limbs in that direction, and the rest of it would end up there. And that's a slow way to move, but I guess that's getting all your body parts in one direction. All right, so the amoeboid movement's different than cilia and flagella. What is stigma? It is a light sensitive eye. Yep. Anybody, this one may not even be on your study guide. You know what does corrugation tissue of earthworms do? If you don't know, write it down, look it up. Corrugation tissue of earthworms. Synthesize glycogen and fat. That's exactly what they do. Is it a question on there anywhere? You've been studying. 35, gas exchange in earthworms is probably how? Diffusion. Yeah, it's right through the skin. If you don't know 36 by now, you probably should go drop the class when you leave here. I noticed one's already headed that way to drop the class. Where do adult tapeworms live? Digestive tract, intestines. How do humans become infected with liver flukes? Eating infected fish. Yeah, and they're going to be raw.
Just fish?
Bad fish.
Just fish though?
Yep. The tail fan of Malacostracans. I'm saying the tail fan of crayfish. And Telson. Europod and Telson. So how do we get infected with the Ascaris lumbricoid? Poor hygiene. That's the bottom line. Poor hygiene. Acquired by fecal contamination of food or hands, by ingesting contaminated vegetables. In other words, wash the stuff off and you're good. Where do juvenile trichina worms live? Skeletal muscle. What's the largest class of annelids? What? Polychaeta? Polychaeta? I guess it could be polychaeta, depends on that. Why are arthropods so successful? Well, beginning of the arthropod chapter, they give you 6 reasons. I would be familiar with those 6 reasons. What do crayfish use to breathe? Gills. How many eyes do spiders have? 8. What kind?
Simple eyes.
Simple, that's right. What do they eat? Most spiders eat
When they catch in the web.
insects. I guess they'd chew on you if they caught you, huh? Most insects possess, 96% of insects possess wings. What makes up the cuticle of insects and crustaceans? What is it? You're gonna cuss me, aren't you? Cotton. She was back there going, it's chitin. It's chitin. First pair of walking legs. This is in a crayfish. Oops, I guess you got one to look up then. 49, study of insects. Entomology. Scorpions are usually not harmful to humans. Ours are not. And if you go to Mexico, you're on your own with scorpions and the water. What class has more species than any other group of animals? Class Insecta. 52, Orthoptera is the order for grasshoppers. So that is true. In North America, where do marine and freshwater lampreys spawn? Freshwater. Freshwater. What's the propulsive mechanism of a fish? Tail and trunk musculature. Or it could be trunk and tail musculature. Either way would get it. What's our early primitive fish? Remember the hagfishes and lampreys? Uh-oh. We didn't look at our flow chart. We spent a lot of time with those the other day. Lampreys almost destroyed the fishing industry. The agnathans are lampreys and hagfish. Agnathans. What is Linnaeus famous for? Our present system of classification, our binomial nomenclature. How do protozoa reproduce? That's most common. That is a form of asexual reproduction. Most common is binary fission. So binary fission is asexual. List some characteristics of flatworms.
No Dutchess.
You keep chasing that one, don't you?
Gotta get it right on wild.
Not if I never ask the right question. They're all triploblastic. They have 3 germ layers. Anything else? They're flat. I knew somebody would put that. It's not going to be an option. Well, I guess you got some work to do there, huh? It's the length of nematodes. Guess you got some more work to do. You have answers?
Less than 5 centimeters.
Well, typically they can be 5 centimeters to up to over a meter. Where does trichina worms live? We already answered this one, didn't we? In the muscle. Where are annelids found? What's an annelid? See, I done messed you up there. It's just a worm, earthworm. That's an example of an annelid.
That moist ground.
They're about anywhere there's moisture. They found them in the sea, fresh water, on land. And again, the cuticle of most invertebrates made of what? That polysaccharide
Cotton.
cotton. Nerve cord, we've already covered that one, haven't we? Who proposed the five kingdom system? Whitaker. We already asked why arthropods are so successful, so that's already been asked. Know about class Insecta, we know they're the most abundant of all classes. What are the most diverse fish? Ray fin fishes. See on that flow chart, we have ray fin fishes, which breaks off into teloist and non-teloist. Give me an example of a teloist.
Scaled fish.
What?
Scaled.
Scaled fishes, with one exception being a catfish in there. Non-teloist, give me two examples. Don't know that one? Well, tell me.
Gar and bowfin.
Gar and bowfin, yeah. What's, give me a couple examples of some of our most primitive fish, the chondrostenes.
Paddlefish.
Paddlefish, mackerel,
Sturgeon.
sturgeon. That's right. Now, not all those are on here, but some of those will be on the test. So, I didn't give you those flow charts just for our own health. You might wanna get a visual of that. 70 we covered. Where is the cocoon of an earthworm produced? Secreted by the,
I don't know how to say it.
clitellum.
Yeah.
Sure, that's what you had. Chelicerae arthropods possess what? This is like their first little hands.
Claws.
No. It's their little hands. Remember we talked about the spiders had to deposit sperm on their little hands? Place it
Pedipalp.
just right, or the pedipalps. That's right. Pedipalps. You got your work cut out for you. There's something less than 100 questions on it. Slightly less.
No,
Drop a test grade? You drop a test grade?
You can kill that, I think we're done.